listening to the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.
The second test then, which starts on Saturday, the 13th of February. Ross, do we have any team news ahead of the next game?
The big England news is Butler's flying home. Max, we're going to get to see Folkes in action potentially. The Broad Anderson dilemma rages on of the rotation policy. But I think we need to start with India and how they are going to bounce back. And I think rectifying their selection is probably easier said than done. Jack, would you agree that kind of the top six is there to stay, right? You're not going to change that India's top six at the moment.
100%. I mean, I think India's top six is still the best top six in the world in India. Mm-hmm. So why change it?
Yeah, and one failure doesn't mean scrapping your entire lineup. So if the franchise owners of RCB are listening, give us a ring and we'll help you out on that.
Another check in the post.
Bowling wise, India's, we've covered it. They got it wrong. I understand wanting a spinner who turns it away from right-handers, but the pie chuck and Nadeem was a big mistake, and it cost India big time. If they want to continue with that approach, I think they'll probably go back to their original plan. So they think that Axar Patel is going to overcome the knee injury that he sustained. More importantly, I think that the BCCI are probably praying that Ravi Jadeja somehow magics a new thumb.
He might be back for the second half of the series. I mean, so Ross, you're saying if Axar Patel, in India's ideal world, Axar Patel's fit, he comes in for Washington Sundar as that kind of number 7. Is that where you're going?
So this is what is quite interesting, because I think the pitch is going to determine whether they play 3 spinners or 3 pacers. I reckon they're going to prepare a bit of a turner. I reckon they're going to be a bit miffed that they're 1-0 down, and they're going to make it as difficult as possible. If they were to go down the 3 pacer route, I think Siraj gets brought in alongside Ishant and Bumrah. I don't think they're in a position to rush Hardik Pandya back out. They said before the test matches that he's not fit enough to bowl, and they're making him net bowl ahead of the England tour. It would mean that, mentioning Washington Sundar, I mean, he's proved himself handy with a bat, but just didn't deliver on the job with the ball. Very inexperienced. He was a net bowler a month ago, cut the guy a break. So I think if there was to be the lineup there, I do think that Axar would replace Sundar.
And then Kuldeep Yadav in for
Nadeem.
Deem, as we've calling him on our
as we've deemed him.
So I think if they do go with that kind of 3 spinners approach, I think they do have to mix it up. I think there's no way they can rock back with the same bowling lineup. I just think the confidence in England's team, if they turned up with the same bowling lineup, would be immeasurable, and I think that'd be a big mental blow for India if they did that.
Not only have you got, you would be mixing up the attack by doing that. You've got a bowler himself who can mix it up. So do it.
Yeah, I just think it's such a no-brainer.
And the thing for me is that they don't have a Ben Stokes, right? And not many teams have a Ben Stokes, but their top
only
6.
One team.
Yeah, their top 6 doesn't offer anything with the ball. I mean, did you see Rohit Sharma bowling? I mean, he's a pie eater and a pie chucker, isn't he? It's not a great look.
I did, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, when he comes on to bowl, when you've got 3 spinners in your team, something has gone seriously wrong.
We've seen England in similar places before, haven't we? Dom Sibley and Joe Denley being entrusted with the ball. So
yeah, so that was probably the low point of the Test match for India, and I think it all comes down to how much they value Axar Patel's batting. It would be a debut for him. Again, Washington Sundar with his 80 and his performances in Australia, he might just get in there for his batting, but I'm not sure that's the right answer when they need to take.
Well, if you want to pick a batsman, there are actual batsmen that you could just throw in if you wanted to. So I'm not sure that would be the right move. Maybe debutants is the way to go with India. It's worked in like 3 of the last 4 tests. Just throw in someone new and they'll be really good. So.
I mean, I think the other thing that Axar does is it's a little bit harsh on Washington Sundar, because I don't think he's been awful, but he does remove the issue that India had in this game where 2 of their 3 spinners did exactly the same thing, except one of them did it way better. But there's basically no reason to not bowl Ashwin if you want a right-handed off spinner, unless Ashwin's absolutely knackered, and then it just didn't give them any variation. So yeah, I mean, if Axar Patel can play, and I was an India fan, I would be absolutely desperate for them to make that change.
And this all of this selection criteria is based upon the squad they have announced. The issue here is that somebody could come back, someone could be rushed back. I mean, look what Australia did with Dave Warner. It doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, but someone like Mohammed Shami or something would put the cat amongst the pigeons in this space. I think they also need to consider the fitness of someone like Ishant. Ishant hasn't played Test cricket for ages. He's come back in, bowled 35, 40 overs and been in the
pretty
field.
well, to be fair.
Yeah, I thought it was one of their better performers actually in the Test match.
I don't think they'll go away from Ishant Sharma, to be honest. Yeah. My understanding is, and as you will both experience, when you're trying to read up on the India team on English news websites, you don't ever really get the full picture. My general understanding, though, is that Ishant Sharma was ready to play in Australia, but they chose not to take him because there was some small question marks, so that he would definitely be ready to play the full series. And
obviously, you had the quarantine complications as well.
Yeah, so I think he'll be good to go.
So that kind of says it on the bowling front, and I think in the back front, I think that's what they'll do. They'll mix up the spinners. I'll be surprised if they go with a 3-pace option, as I do anticipate that they will try to choose a pitch that turns more, because I think that they're going to back their batsmen to get more runs over Leach and Best than they back England's batsmen to get runs off of Jadeja, off of Ashwin and the others.
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally the question here is would England be more scared of Kuldeep Yadav or Nadeem? And
do we have to answer that?
The answer, obviously we do, or obviously the India team need to question that. But I think it's really obvious. This is the 4th time I've said it now, but pick that guy. What's the worst that happens? He bowls badly. I mean, that's all that Nadeem did anyway. I don't see Nadeem bowling much better than he did. I mean, he bowled okay in spells, but he's worse than Jack Leach. I mean, he was out bowled by Jack Leach over the Test, probably in the same sort of level as Don Bess, and it's just not. It just really wasn't threatening.
What about where would you put him against Embledenia?
I think he was worse than Embledenia.
We know your feelings about him, so that's
Lemonland.
That's pretty chastising.
And I think there's also a bit about Nadeem where he didn't control the run rate at all. He went at 3.38 and over across the Test match. His figures were 69 overs, 4 wickets for 233 runs. That's not a good return for a spinner you're asking to do it, right?
And he got to bowl as part of that declaration spell when England would like doing weird stuff. In the actual innings, the overs he bowled in the game when it mattered were bad. Yeah. There's no way around that. And I just looking at how he bowls, I don't think, unless like you say, Ross, they produce some kind of aberration of a wicket which spins from day one. I just don't see what where the challenge is at the top level for him.
Agreed. So 2 other points and where I think India could must take a bit of responsibility and change up things. So in terms of their senior batsmen, they're not going to fail this whole series. Like they might have failed in this Test match, but Pujara, Rohit, Gill showed his class and he's kind of getting there. But Kohli hit 70 odd.
And there was a bit of bad luck in there as well, wasn't there, with Pujara and Kohli? So.
Yeah, but that's the bit. That's what it takes to win. Sometimes a bit of luck going your way. But they do need to take responsibility. We talked about Pant earlier, but Rahane it was the vice captain. He was the captain, for goodness sake, when he was in Australia. His innings did not scream senior batsman at all. So they say he's
it was confused.
Yeah.
It was just a confused thing to do. I assume you're talking particularly about the first innings here, not.
Yeah, he might have been confused about where his stumps went in the second innings, but that's about it.
Although some people did say that he maybe didn't play that ball that well. I mean, I think if you get that second or third up, you're in trouble, aren't you?
I think a good gauge on the cricket podcast is always how would we have done against the ball. And I think it probably would have got.
I'd have been fine, and Jack would have been fine as well. Would have pitched outside leg, just pad up,
smacked into us. Would have really hurt.
broken the kneecap.
Yeah, I think India. The only thing I would say for the Indian batting is that they maybe need to be a little bit more aware of the game situation, and like most of the rest of the world, maybe they need to reconsider how good this England team actually is, and be honest with themselves that scoring at 4.5 and over.
Yeah, I mean,
might be tricky.
Let's face it, no one is more surprised about how good England were than England fans.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about what England could do differently. So I think that kind of sums up India in terms of pick the right team, treat the game with a bit more, I think respect's probably the wrong terminology, but treat England with a bit more respect and bring your A game. And then India will soon find themselves back in the runs and back in contention.
Do more planning.
Yeah, more play. Yeah, that's a very nice point. So what will England do differently? Max, after a thumping win like that, I mean, surely it's quite difficult to suggest making changes to a winning 11?
Very difficult. Obviously, you have the rotation policy, so whether they were, I would imagine they were planning to bring in Broad for this one, and they may have to change their mind. So I think they might have been planning to bring in Broad for this one anyway, for the test just gone, and then Anderson bowled so well against Sri Lanka and forced their hand.
The thing here, Max, is they were planning to be 1-0 down.
Yeah,
when they decided that Broad would be playing the second test. That's the reality of the situation. They weren't. Now the robbery's on. The question's a lot.
Yeah. Suddenly, what do you do? It's a really interesting situation. It's a good test for how robust this rotation policy is going to be. I think the other question, so obviously we're going to see Folkes instead of Buttler as we expect. The other question to answer is Johnny Bairstow, because he's now back. They brought him back a test earlier than they were planning to. And you have to wonder whether Dan Lawrence might get very unlucky and be left out. My concern for Dan Lawrence is that the 2 wickets were almost exactly the same. And his head was falling over a little bit and he got trapped. It was almost Johnny Bairstow-esque in a way.
Yeah, I don't really hate dropping Lawrence. He's played 3 tests. I'm sure he'll come back round again. He's played 3 tests in hard places to play cricket if you've not got a lot of experience there. I think you can almost say we're just giving you a rest. Like this isn't a permanent dismissal from the England side. You've not necessarily done bad. You batted well in a couple of times, but we've got this guy coming back who was our plan A, if you like. And we're going to go with him. I don't know if Bairstow's up to it at number 3 in Test cricket. I
against
think
India's pace attack.
Yeah, I don't think there's much between Bairstow and Lawrence. But Bairstow is liked by that England setup, and I suspect they'll make the conservative selection for the second.
So, and that comes back to my point around changing a winning 11. So, if there's going to be changes, so we're already changing Buttler for Folkes, Folkes for Buttler, sorry, Bairstow for Lawrence. That's already 2, and then Broad potentially for Anderson. You're not going to change 3 people out of a winning 11. I just don't see that happening. Even on the bowling front, I thought Archer actually bowled really well in this test match, kind of went under the radar, but actually he fulfilled his role really well. And it was probably one of the best performances in test whites that he's actually done. I think his fitness might be a concern, but as there's only 3 days between this one and then I think 6 or 7 between the one after, I think this is the time where they're just like, do you know what? We need to play our best 11 here and go for the win. Because if they win this second test match, it is great for it. It's absolutely brilliant.
And at that point, the World Test Championship final is on the cards. And the worst thing that we could possibly do is win the series 2-1 and let Australia in.
We're top of the table at the moment, unbelievably. England have gone from 4th to top, I think, as a result of that, or of the game that finished today. My instinct is to stick with the plan that got them to this point, which is the rotation plan, basically. Bowlers rested. I will. If I were an England fan, and I guess I am an England fan, I would most want to see Anderson bowling well in that first game in Ahmedabad under lights. Uh, I don't. I don't think I would. I wouldn't want him to go into that tired, and I think there's the possibility that happens. This test in Chennai, I think Ross might be right. They might make that pitch spin a little bit more. He might be a little bit, not useless, but a little bit less effective, or there'll be better options. I think Broad in a game where the ball does spin. I think Broad's just as good an option because he can offer the same control, albeit without the booming in swingers every now and then. I'd do that. Basically, I'd stick with what your original plan was, even though it will make all the dinosaurs really angry. Michael Vaughan will be off his fucking nut, won't he?
Yeah. Well, that's all the more reason to do it, isn't it?
And then the other bit is the spinners. So Bess and Leach, they're going to stay the same, right? I don't see Mo and Ali coming into the side for this test match.
Crack on.
Yeah. The only question mark there is whether Dom Bess actually did have the yips in the morning of day 5, because he bowled badly. Like there were a lot of full tosses, a few half trackers. If something more severe is wrong there and he's not just tired, they'll have to change him because you need two spinners from two spinners. Yeah, but
Joe Root can't hit all the runs and
certainly. Yeah, that is certainly a really speculative point I'm making there.
He batted quite well as well, Don Bess. I think we should probably give him some credit there, especially in the first innings in the evening session. He did a really important job.
I couldn't agree more, Max. So there we go. We're saying that Broad is more than likely going to come in for Anderson, and that Bairstow will probably come in for Lawrence, and Folkes will be in for Butler.
Yeah, although all of those things could not happen. I mean, Bairstow could be keeping wicket, Mo and Ali's bowling, and being dropped for Broad like that. I mean, it's England, isn't it? But I think they're a little bit more consistent recently, and I think what you summarised there, Ross, is probably right.
Okay, well, it tees up what should be a fantastic game starting on Saturday, as you said, Max. Are we sticking with the predictions? Are you still going for 4-0, Jack?
Are you going to do a Michael Vaughan and change your mind?
You know what? So my original 4-0 prediction, as I sort of said earlier, was based on the idea that India were 80% favourites for every single test. Which, if you're good at maths, means 4-0's about a 40% likelihood, and I think works out mathematically as the best option to go for. I would read that now. I think England was so much better than I expected that I think they will win another test. If I'd seen this England, if I'd been aware that this England existed 7 days ago, and we were doing the preview show, and it was a 3-match series, so I've changed a few things here. If it was a 3-match series, I would have predicted 2-1 to India. I think India are still better, but I think in a 3-match series, England would win one test. We've basically got a 3-match series here, boys, haven't we? So
2-2.
I think 2-2. I think England are gonna pull off a little bit of a robbery and send Australia to the final.
That is so ICC, isn't it? That England and India can play against each other, and whatever scenario it is, Australia still have a chance of getting into the final, and they've pulled out of the South Africa tour because they're a bunch of pussies. So it's unbelievable. Max, are you sticking with your 3-1 prediction?
Well, firstly, I'll say it's not because they're a bunch of pussies; it's because they want to play in the IPL. But anyway,
greedy pussies. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I'm going to stick with it until I'm wrong. So we'll stay with 3-1 for now. But I'm teetering.
Nice. I'm going to go 2-1 England.
Oh my god, that would be an incredible win. It would. I tell you what, India fans aren't going to like this either, but it would be better than them winning in Australia. Every ground in India is a gabatoire. Like if you've lost once at home in a decade, it doesn't matter where you play, you're the king. And if England pulled off 2-1, boy, a good series in England as well.
Yeah, there's also a thing to remember for our Indian fans listening to this is that give us this. We can enjoy this one test match that we get to win. Like, this might be the only one we get to, so forgive our excitement. I think that wraps up the preview of the next test match. Shall we have a quick break and then come back with cricket news?
That is very good.